I think there's some people that don't understand the benefits and the value of the Wyoming Arts Council. Bob Coronato is one of the greatest painters in the nation, and he sits down there in Hulett and about half starves to death, but he's one of the best there is. You know, have you met him?
I'm Bob Coronato. I got here about 18 years ago. I'll make a long story short, I was coming through Wyoming on a vacation, and I went to a museum over in Spearfish, South Dakota, to see some original Remingtons and Russells. Went over there and they didn't have any. And so I went to the museum curator and said, hey, I noticed you don't have any artwork. And I said, I do Western paintings. Would you give me a show if I did a bunch of artwork? And at that time I was in college. And so he said, yeah, if we like your stuff, we'll give you a show. He said, we're going to have our grand reopening in about 2 years. And so I spent the next 2 years, I did every assignment as a Western painting. And when I graduated a week later, I headed out and was at the museum and hung all my paintings there for the grand reopening. And at the grand reopening, there was a guy there who said, can I give a critique? And I said, sure. And he said, well, you screwed up here on the saddle. You got a 1930s saddle and an 1880s painting. He said, well, you have the talent, but you don't have the experience. He said, you move out to Wyoming, and I'll change all that. So I moved. About 2 weeks later, I called him up and said, hey, was that offer serious? He said, yeah. So I packed up everything I owned, moved out to a town of 400 people. I started living upstairs above the saddle shop, and I'm working on a ranch down by Devil's Tower. And so pretty much that changed my life right there. I like doing rodeo posters. That's probably my favorite thing to do ever since I was a little kid. And so just doing more of them, it takes me about 6 months to do, so I can't do but more than maybe one a year. So I kind of pick a town a year and try to keep them in Wyoming. And it starts out as an etching, and etchings are done on a copper plate. You take a piece of copper and you scratch all the lines into the varnish that's on a piece of copper, and you dip it into an acid. The acid eats those lines into the copper, and then when you wipe that varnish off, you have a printing plate. So you can rub ink into those lines and print it off of an old-time printing press. And so these are the etchings here, and what I do is then I take the imagery from the etchings, enlarge them, and silk screen them down onto a wood panel that I've painted on top of. And then I go over top of that with layers of oil. And the end result is sort of a painting of layers. And I kind of been keeping it to a series of one here, one there, So the first one I did was Wickenburg, Arizona. That was the first one I did. Then I did Hulett's. Then I did Sheridan's. And then Belfouche, South Dakota. Hopefully Deadwood. And then hopefully a couple of the others in Wyoming. And then maybe Cheyenne Frontier Days is the end. Is something I'm shooting for. Well, when I first got here, the town was sort of a lot of stucco buildings and rundown kind of looking, a lot of buildings that weren't kept up. And so I spent 2 or 3 or 4 years repairing the outside of the building and fixing it up, making it look Western and cleaning it up. And then I turned the inside into a really nice gallery little by little over time, trading for some wood and fixing things here and there. And everyone kept saying, gosh, this building's really nice. Why are you doing this? And after a while, it just sort of inspired other people. They fixed up their building, and then it went down the street all the way down. The building across the street redid their entire outside and fixed it up and made it look more Western, and then the building down the street, and it just kept going until now every building in town has a Western false front to it. So then 2 years ago when the town got funded for a museum, the museum just naturally wanted to fit in, so immediately went with the Old West look. And so sort of my work is done now. Everyone sort of wants it to fit in.
Yeah, Bob Coronato would be a great person for you to get on the...
In Hulett.
Yeah, you should go into Hulett and meet him. Great guy, great guy.